Welcome to the Tube Duel Original Podcast. In today's explainer, we're diving into the absolutely wild history of Samsung. I mean, you or someone you know probably has a Samsung phone in their pocket right now, or maybe a Samsung TV in the living room. But the origins of this massive company, well, they are definitely not what you might expect. So let's look at how a very small, simple trading business grew into one of the biggest tech empires on the planet.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. From dried fish to tech. 2. Changing everything for quality. 3. The great smartphone wars. 4. The giant Chaebol empire. And 5. Scandals, success, and future. All right, let's jump in.
Part 1. From dried fish to tech.
So picture this. It's 1938 in Korea, and founder Lee Byung-chul takes a really big risk. Samsung actually started out as a small grocery trader. Yeah, they were just exporting dried fish, vegetables, and noodles. But to survive and grow, they knew they had to adapt. Fast forward to 1969, and they take this huge leap into electronics, starting with black and white TVs. Then, in the 1980s, they took an even bigger gamble. They poured massive investments into semiconductors and memory chips. It was risky, for sure, but it laid the foundation for the giant we know today.
Section 2. Changing everything for quality.
Okay, so simply making electronics just wasn't enough. By 1987, the founder's son, Lee Kun-hee, took over as chairman, and he realized a hard truth. Samsung was making a ton of products, but honestly, the quality was just too low to compete globally with rivals like Sony. He knew that churning out cheap goods was basically a dead end. This leads us to a massive turning point. In 1993, during a meeting in Frankfurt, Lee Kun-hee famously told his executives, "Change everything except your wife and kids." Talk about intense, right? He demanded a total focus on top-tier quality, even if it meant selling fewer products at first. And it worked. This completely shifted their culture, and by 2006, they had become the #1 TV maker in the world.
Part 3. The great smartphone wars.
Now we enter the modern era. Samsung moved incredibly fast to jump into the mobile phone race. Step 1, they launched the Galaxy S series in 2010. The competition? Absolutely fierce. Step 2, just a year later, in 2011, Apple actually sued Samsung, claiming they copied the iPhone's design. This kicked off what we now call the global smartphone patent wars. But here's the crazy part. Step 3. By 2012, despite all the massive legal fights, the Galaxy S3 was actually outselling the iPhone 4S worldwide. And these lawsuits, they played out totally differently depending on where you were in the world. It was literally a global legal chessboard. In the United States, a jury sided heavily with Apple and awarded them over $1 billion. But over in South Korea, the court decided that both companies actually infringed on each other and banned older models from both brands. And in the United Kingdom, a judge ruled Samsung did not copy the iPad, and get this, they even forced Apple to post a public notice saying so. It just shows how incredibly complicated international law can be. Section 4. The giant Chaebol empire. To really understand South Korea's economy, you absolutely have to know this specific word, chaebol. Basically, a chaebol is a huge family-owned business conglomerate. They play a massive role in South Korea's economy and politics. And today, Samsung is the single largest and most powerful of these chaebols.
To put that power into perspective, let's compare some numbers. Think about Walmart. It's the biggest retailer in the United States, right? But it makes up only about 2.5% of the US GDP. Now look at Samsung. Their share of South Korea's entire GDP is a staggering 23%. That level of influence in a single country is just mind-blowing.
So how do they reach 23%? Well, the Lee family operates a massive network of 62 different companies. We're talking about Samsung Electronics for your smartphones and chips, sure, but they also run Samsung Life Insurance. They have Samsung C&T, which literally built the Incheon International Airport. There's Samsung Heavy Industries, building massive LNG cargo ships. Oh, and they even own the Everland Resort, which is the largest theme park in South Korea. They do the whole shebang.
Part 5. Scandals, success, and future.
With all that corporate power comes some serious questions. Namely, does this massive economic power come with a cost to accountability? When a national economy relies this heavily on just one company, we have to ask if they operate under the exact same rules as everyone else. The dynamics of justice can get pretty complicated here.
History definitely shows some turbulence for Samsung's leadership. Back in 1996, Chairman Lee Kun-hee was convicted of bribery, but he was later pardoned. In 2016, we saw the massive global recall of the Galaxy Note 7 due to battery fires. Then, in 2017, Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong was convicted in a corruption scandal, though he was later paroled. And recently, in 2024, the company saw its first historic labor strike by the Samsung Electronics Union. So they definitely wobble, but somehow they always seem to recover.
And recover they do. Despite all those hurdles, the product recalls, and intense competition from Apple and Chinese brands, look at this number, $219.17 billion. That was Samsung Electronics revenue in 2024. They are still an absolute financial giant, leading the globe in smartphones and memory chips.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question. We have watched Samsung pivot from selling dried fish in 1938 to dominating the tech world today. They clearly know how to adapt. But with technology evolving faster than ever before, how will they adapt to the next century of innovation? Can they keep that momentum going? Thanks so much for tuning in, and always keep questioning how the world around you is built.